But then it is funny the X-Files was really able to do it. I mean, yeah, you've got Skinner, but he didn't take up a lot of screen time.
No.
And how about that? Skinner is really the Mr. Pesto of the X-Files. I have never thought that in my life.
That's the big quote that we use when we advertise this episode.
Uh-huh.
It's beginning to look
A lot like Christmas. That's what it is.
everywhere you go.
Tree trimming party in the lobby at 10.
Listening once again with the candy canes and silver lanes aglow. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas.
Nice to see it's the holly that will be. Hi, and welcome back to the Shipyard. I'm Dawn, and this is Lucy.
Hi, welcome back.
You may have noticed, you may not, that it's been a while since we've done a on-screen video. We've been doing mostly audios. That's because life has been a bit roller coastery for us.
A little bit frantic is a bit of an understatement.
Especially Lucy, who is now undertaking a master's degree in media and communication, and so yes, this is homework for her. So, but hopefully we'll be able to get some more videos going when we can. We can't do a schedule at the moment because of life. So, but hopefully you've been enjoying our pajama party episodes where we talk through a specific episode of something. And but it's only audio, so we don't have to put makeup on or do our hair or get out of bed, frankly.
We love our pajamas.
Yes. So but here we are back for our Christmas edition. Woo, Christmas. We're lovers of all things Christmas anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely love all things Christmas, especially Christmas TV. And hopefully on Twitter you'll have been seeing that we've been sharing some of our favorite Christmas episodes of TV shows.
We've been putting some tweets up and we're putting stuff on Instagram and Facebook as well over the last few weeks of classic TV Christmas episodes. And I think we've also backed that up with the, like Dawn said, with our Christmas pajama party episodes. We've also put a few things that aren't normally, that would fall under our shipping things that are slightly, they're not shippy, but they're classic, like A Little Miracle, Quantum Leap, Bernard and the Genie, which I love. I think I've watched twice already, and it's still a week till Christmas, although it might not be by the time this goes out. And yeah, so I think people tend to put a little bit more effort in their Christmas ones because they know people are at home and they try and draw in the big ratings. I mean, if you notice, except for this year, I think it goes out on New Year's Day, and maybe for the last couple of years, but there's at least 12 individual Doctor Who episodes that started from 2005 with the Christmas invasion. So it's a big deal, I think, Christmas episodes for TV. And some of them are pretty awesome. And I'm sure that we've done loads. Please let us know if we've not mentioned any Christmas TV show, because like we've mentioned before, we haven't seen everything. And these are just our favourites. So, and things that have stood out and memorable for us. So flag any that we haven't mentioned. We're happy to go and have a look.
So welcome to our special guest, Scott Ryan. He has written several books about TV, including Twin Peaks and 30-something, but we're speaking to him especially because of Moonlighting. He's written the Oral History of Moonlighting, which is the definitive guide to Moonlighting and all that went on behind the scenes. So welcome, Scott, to the Shipyard.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. And the thing about the book being the definitive book about moonlighting, it's the best and the worst book ever about moonlighting because it's the only book about moonlighting. So I get to be both.
Thank you for doing that. It's been missing from our lives. It's like it's only taken 30 years. So well done. Thank you for doing it.
That's exactly how I felt. I mean, I really did this book because I wanted there to be one, and it always bothered me that there wasn't. I mean, I think it's important for people to realize how big this show was. You know, if you want to take something that was big now, like Game of Thrones or something, they just had a fraction of viewers compared to what Moonlighting had. Like 60 million people in America used to watch Moonlighting. That's crazy.
That's
Wow.
huge amount. So was that what made you decide to write the book? Was that you just felt it was missing and you were the person to fill the gap?
I definitely felt I was the person to fill the gap, without a doubt, because I loved the show so much, but also I wasn't blinded to the downfalls of the show. There certainly are downfalls, and I was interested in getting to the bottom of it, because Glen Gordon Caron, who wrote and created the series, is certainly one of the best television writers there ever was. So to find out how he made mistakes and why was interesting to me, and I feel like we did. And I just noticed your Moonlighting DVD in the bottom there with around. Oh, isn't that adorable?
I have one of the rare. I've got season 1 and 2 and season 3 before they went out of print or whatever.
Oh yeah, I've got mine on my shelf, which is that.
Well, you've got your pillow, which is better. So
Dawn made this for me for my birthday last year.
Oh, now that's a good friend. To me, she didn't get me anything last year for my birthday. Nothing.
Oh, that's just mean, Dawn.
And all I asked her for was a book on Inside number 9.
Funnily enough, they brought a book out for Christmas. It's top of my Christmas list. I'm going to remove my daily boppers because they're jingling and it is most distracting. So just for continuity, I have taken these off.
Okay.
Yes. So we wanted to see, did you know about the difference between the British airing of Moonlighting and obviously the American? Did you know how it aired in Britain and what the reception was in Britain?
No, I didn't. But I have been getting emails from people telling me about how strangely it aired in Britain and Germany.
Yeah.
How did you guys view it?
Yeah, I don't remember first seeing it, but I know I was watching it from the start. But I've got the dates. I wrote all the dates down because they basically aired season 1 and 2 as one season, and it was in the middle of the summer, which is obviously not a great ratings time.
I think we were lucky though, because till later we didn't. So we had all the episodes. I think it's like at the beginning of Cool Hand Dave, where they got the ABC saying, "Oh, we got to look for another act." And then at the beginning of I Am Curious Melly, there's a whole newsreel saying no new episodes because Sybil's not pregnant and Bruce has hurt his shoulder. And even the Straight Poop, you've got Rona Barrett saying there's no new episode again. Whereas in the UK, they aired back to back. So we were watching it and it was like, okay, it was only a week ago, but we'll go with it. It's like
that is so funny, because that was a major
it's
part of it airing in America that it was never on.
Yeah.
I think the BBC, because like Dawn said, it aired over here in 1986. We had it a good year after it was on in the States. So I think they were able to preempt any issues. So that delay enabled them to have it without a gap. And they probably, maybe the schedulers knew there was an issue going on in the States, so they held it back again for the final season. So we didn't have such a big gap in between the episodes, possibly.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of friends who live in London, and because through Twin Peaks, and they all pretty much told me we never really heard of Moonlighting, and it wasn't big over here, and we don't, it wasn't that big of a deal.
That's not strictly true. It was the number one show on it was on BBC Two, which isn't the main ones back in the 80s. It was BBC One, BBC Two, ITV and Channel 4. But the main two channels were BBC One and ITV. So it was on the lesser BBC channel. But even then, it was getting 6-7 million viewers a week. And now you'd be lucky to get that on a main channel, what with streaming and everything else. But it was the number one show at that time when it airs over here. So I guess either you watched it or you didn't. So.
Right.
But
they probably just didn't want to buy my book. was
Oh,
proud.
so we're putting the cover now. So it's like me talking to the shipyard girls. We know the truth.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to be like, now you better buy my book if you really want to be my friend. So come on.
I think it must have been a fairly culturally big, because Bruce Willis, you know, when he released his album, that was high in the chart, and that was before Die Hard, wasn't it, when he released that?
It was.
And the single did really well, and the album did really well. So I think it must have been, to me, I mean, I was 11 at the time, 11, 12, and so it felt to me like it was well known, but obviously I wasn't studying the great culture of that, you know, what people were talking about. Of course, we didn't have fandom in those days, so we don't.
Right.
Well, my confession is my very first single. My uncle bought it for me for 75p in Woolworths. It was Bruce Willis, Respect Yourself, was my very first single.
Wow. That's amazing. And was it on 45 or was it a single?
45.
Okay.
Yeah, it was on a 45. And I had the album on vinyl as well.
That's amazing. I'm not sure that I've seen the album on vinyl. I liked the song Secret Agent Man that was on there as well.
Yeah.
I always thought that was a good one.
Yeah, it must have been Christmas 1987. My brother gave me the Ultimate Moonlighting fan kit, and he drew a caricature of Maddie and David on a box, and inside it he put Bruce's album and the Moonlighting soundtrack and the Moonlighting video cassette. At that time it was only the pilot, that was all you could get on video cassette. So that was my Christmas present. So
wow, that's a good brother.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he was a lot older than me, so you know, he had money.
There you go, that's what you're looking for.
It was
so how
your fandom even then.
Yes, exactly. I knew there. How did you come about getting in contact with all your interviewees for the book?
That it takes so long. I mean, that really took me about 1.5 years to get everyone. I had interviewed Glen in 2015 for the Red Room podcast. And so I had Glen's contact. And I think right then I kind of tried to push it in 2015 to do a book, but I had never written anything and he sort of blew me off. And then I ended up doing my 30-something book and my book about David Letterman. And it was time for me to work on something else. And moonlighting was what I always wanted to do. I mean, that was, you know, this is really my dream book that I always wanted to work on. And I thought, well, now that I have some books to my name, maybe Glen would be more interested. So I sent him links to the Letterman and 30-something book, pitched it. And I think he answered within a day and said, you know what, I think it's time. Let's do this. And then once I had his blessing, then I started reaching out to all the writers, directors, actors, and I could start the email with, Glen has given me the blessing to do this book. And then everyone was into it.
Yeah. And it's just a cold call, isn't it? If you got his approval, then it's not just you asking, you say, yeah.
Right.
Interesting.
What about Sybil and Bruce? Well, we know from the Moonlighting podcast that you did that you did ask, Bruce did agree to it, but it just didn't work out.
Yeah, so very early on, once I got Glen, I contacted Sybil's people and Bruce's people, their agents. And I never, ever one time heard back from Bruce's people, even though I emailed them as much as Sybil. Sybil's people would always come back and say, did you get Bruce? And then I was like, well, this is horrible. So I got one answering me, but they're saying they're doing it if you get Bruce, but Bruce's people are not answering me. So I kept getting everyone else. And once I had got all the writers and I had got Mr. Pesto and Herbert Viola through Ron Osborne and Jeff Reno, who wrote like all, so many great episodes. They hooked me up with Curtis and Elise. Then I went to Glen and I said, look, Sybil will do it if Bruce will do it, and I can't get Bruce. Could you get me Bruce? And Glen, and I put together the first chapter, which didn't obviously have Sybil in it, but it had everyone else.
Yeah.
And I sent the first chapter to Glen, which was about the character. I put it as one. Right now in the book, it's 2 chapters, but I do a chapter on David and a chapter on Maddie, just to let the readers kind of remember who they are. I put that together as one thing and I sent it to Glen. And he called me, like he didn't even email me back. He just called. Like I looked down at my phone, it says Glen Gordon Karen is calling you. And like, you know, you're just about ready to freak out. And he said, I just read what you wrote. And I just got off the phone with Bruce and told him, you got to do this book. You know, everyone's in it. And Bruce said yes, that he would do the interview. So I was like, sweet. So I went to Sybil's people and I said, Bruce said yes. So then they got me Sybil. I did the Sybil interview. Then I was like, Glen, what are we doing with Bruce? He's like, oh, Tuesday at noon. Tuesday at 11:50. Bruce canceled. And then he was like, but it's next Thursday at the, and it just kept happening. I think he canceled like 6 times. And then it never happened. But Sybil and I became friends. And I was talking to Sybil like 3 times a week.
Wow.
And this was during the pandemic, so she couldn't work. She had nothing else to do but talk to this idiot. And I was like, hey, I'm all for it. So me and Sybil became really good friends. And I had all this great stuff. And then I was kind of thinking, Bruce is playing me. And I thought, do I tell Sybil I don't have Bruce? And is she going to say, well, I'm not going to be in it?
Yeah.
But she never asked me if Bruce did it or not, and she never cared. I think it was her people that were like, we're not going to let our client go unless Bruce goes. But I don't think it was Sybil at all. I don't think she ever knew about it till the time they finally, you know, a year and a half later when they put me in. I feel like that was a really long answer, and I apologize.
No, it's really fascinating. I think from listening to the Moonlighting podcast that you did, to that you were a huge fan when this was on the air. Like I think you said you did videos and like everything else. So to have these conversations and then to have become friends with Sybil Shepherd, your teenage self must be going slightly wild at this.
You know, it's like, I don't know if in London, were you guys Gen Xers, or are you guys consider yourself Generation X, or is that an American thing?
We're in 40s, so I think we're slightly just before that. It's like after that, like we're children of the 80s, so
so like I don't know, I was just sort of brought up to like not get overly excited and not appreciate, no, it's not appreciate, but you know, I'm just sort of like Christian Slater and Winona Ryder and all those movies. Like, so I play it really cool, and I don't think about it. Like when we're having this talk and I'm reliving what happened, then I'm like, holy moly, how that didn't happen. That wasn't me. Glen Gordon Karen didn't call me. Like Sybil Shepherd never called me. But at the time, it's my job. Yeah. And I have so many questions. Like I'm so interested in, like, by the time I got to Sybil, there was things I really needed to know to see what was true or not. And, you know, I had to ask Sybil some really, really difficult and scary questions. And I asked her every question you wish I would have asked her. I promise you I asked her, whether she answered or not. It may not be in the book. If it's not in the book, it's because Sybil didn't answer, but I asked them.
Did anything about...
She was very honest anyway.
She was always honest.
Did surprise you about interviewing her or any of the people that you interviewed? Did you think, because the story of Moonlighting is fairly well known in terms of the issues behind the scenes and the ratings and the delays, but interviewing, did anything surprise you that they say anything that you didn't expect?
I think what surprised me was how much they wanted to talk to me and how much they needed to talk to me. And it's not about me. I'm not saying like Sybil Shepherd was waiting for Scott Ryan to call her. She didn't know about me, and she probably knows about me now, but it's probably, you know, she's not sitting at home wondering what I'm doing right now. But I think they needed to get this off their chest, because most of them, really including Sybil, have never really been interviewed about it because it was so long ago. And you know how it is. People don't care. They want to talk about what's going on right now. And I think they all wanted to tell their story. And I'm a little disappointed Bruce isn't in the book, but I don't think the book needs him. I'm not I mean, I think the book's fine without him, but I think Bruce missed an opportunity because I could tell from each person that a burden was lifted off them because they finally got to tell the truth. And that's, to me, was surprising, that they almost needed to tell me as much as I wanted to hear it.
I think in your book, because I've been listening to the audio version,
Oh,
and
cool.
I think there's a few
Is
points.
is it good? Because it took me forever, and I've never listened to it. I just put it up there.
Yeah, to be honest, because I'm doing a degree at the moment. I've gone back to university, and so it's to read something when I'm at home. I'm doing course work and stuff. Right. So to listen to it in my car, it's been really good. So I've been listening to it back and forth, and so yeah, no, I think it's actually quite good to hear it like spoken out. Yeah, I really liked it.
Oh, I just meant like quality wise, because I want to know. Nobody's complained about it, but I did it myself. I mean, I did the whole audiobook myself, which I've never done one before.
I like hearing you now. It's like oh yeah, it's the same. Yeah, it's all.
Yeah, I said, yeah, I'm sick of listening to this guy. Why don't you shut up for once?
It sounds familiar. I've heard it recently. Yeah, but yeah, because there's a bit where you said that it felt like therapy sessions with
it really did.
Some of them.
It honestly did.
Do you think that one of the things I noticed in the book is that although there's a lot of the crew talked about issues they had with Sybil on the set, you know, they all seem to still hold her despite those issues with real respect and affection. Do you think that was because, looking back now, they understand her situation better, and they being a woman? I
totally do. I think if I would have, first of all, I couldn't have done this book in, let's say, 93 when it was still fresh. I mean, I honestly think we needed the 30 years for everyone to cool out. Because when we talked about some of the, when it gets off the rails, like in season 4, I mean, they could get hot and they could get angry, but I think they also realized that the pressure that was put on Bruce Willis and Sybil Shepherd was insane. And if there's one thing that I'm not sure the book gets across, although I know Roger Director, who was one of the producers, tells a great story about how he remembered just one time the three of them just like sitting off to the set, and they couldn't have been more tired, because he's like, you just don't realize the pressure. They were in every scene. There's a million lines, and you know, it's the hottest show in the world and everybody wants the next episode, and they just were under a lot of stress. So they were bound to misbehave. How many of us are perfect when we're in a bad mood?
Very true.
As well as back then, I think because Sybil was such a strong character, having it a strong woman as well, they get the terms like, oh, she's being difficult, she's being a bitch or whatever. But do you think it's just because she was a woman and it was a very much a boys' club in the 80s?
I do.
With me, and it's.
I do. But I will say that Sybil would not have that conversation with me. Not that she was skirting it, but I don't think she could see it. You know, like if you interviewed a 22-year-old actress and she had to put up with what Sybil put up with, that 22-year-old would lose it. But I think because Sybil came up through the time it was a boys' club, she couldn't see it that way. When I said, you know, were you upset there were no female directors? Or did you, you know, I talked to her about Mulberry Street, you know, it was written by a woman. Is that why it was so good? I don't think she cared, because I feel like from her generation, you didn't look at it that way. And there were men running it, and there were men producers, and probably every one of them wanted a piece of Sybil, literally and figuratively. So I found it fascinating. I think it's true, but nobody really would say it.
I think so, because I think maybe, like you say, she did all the work with Peter Bogdanovich and Taxi Driver, everything leading up. In the 80s, it was kind of expected it to be all the male hierarchy, all the top jobs were 99% women. I think in one of your podcasts, you mentioned the writer that did Soap.
Yeah, and Susan Harris.
And that was a very unusual thing to have a showrunner that was a female. And I think she was divorced as well, which is even more unusual. But even when you get to the 90s, it's still, or even today, I think it's still a very male-dominated industry. But I think, like you say, if she's come up through that, see what you know, you don't think more about it, I guess.
Yeah, and she really didn't, even in retrospect. And obviously, when I asked the men, they didn't think it either. But I mean, I did ask Jay and Glenn and all, Jeff and Ron, because I feel, and this is just me talking as a fan, not as the writer of this book. I feel that in seasons 4, especially, it's hard to root for Maddie. It's just hard to.
Yes.
And I tried to ask the writers, did you feel, your whole podcast is about relationships, and for those two to work, for the male and the female, or whatever, two couples to work, both of them have to be equal or the relationship doesn't work.
I mean,
and they weren't equal.
I think in season 4, David has such character development, but I think because he had more screen time, he had that opportunity to grow. But I think we mentioned in the first episode we did, where we talked about the Moonlighting curse, or not the Moonlighting curse, depending on your view. I think Maddie is not a very likable character. Some of the things she does, but I think even in Sybil Shepherd's book, she said that sometimes she thinks Maddie was borderline bipolar, because she would just go from one extreme to the other. And there are moments where you think she's not a very likable character. And I think you even mentioned it in your book that as much as David and Maddie loved each other, they didn't like each other very much, or you often got that impression. It's like, why? I think, it's quite a surprising dynamic at various points.
For you guys, who is the best TV couple of all time?
Oh,
that's the question.
I would say Mulder and Scully. I think so.
I love that answer. Good answer.
Thank you.
What do you think?
I have to think about it for a second.
But just to say that when I got into fandoms online, it was because of the X-Files. I was an original shipper. We were both were.
I think Bones maybe changed the dynamic and kind of said that actually the Moonlighting curse doesn't exist, because we've talked about this. I think you mentioned it in your book about the curse, and I think we've come with a theory that in terms of moonlighting, we kind of think that it was a lot of different elements that led up to the demise of the TV show, but whereas the curse is more now just a myth, that if a couple gets together, we've said this ourselves, when the TV show couple get together, we kind of lose interest. So I don't think it's the Moonlighting curse, it's just us as human beings. We see that build up, and then it's like, well, what are we watching it for now when they do get together? But I think Bones and Castle and more ensemble shows have kind of proved to be the anti-Moonlighting curse.
Part of the reason I think Dave and Maddie work as an amazing TV couple, I would say, I really do like the Mulder and Scully answer, but for me, Dave and Maddie and Buffy and Angel would be the people that I would put as the best couples. I mean, I would struggle to pick between Buffy and Angel and Dave and Maddie, but what is consistent about both those things is that they are horrible for each other. And that is what writers miss. So Bones is an example I love to use. So I loved Bones. And I watched the first 100 episodes of Bones. And I don't know if you remember this, but in the 100th episode, Booth tells Bones he loves her, and she says, I love you. And they decide not to get together. Now, do you know two grown-ups that has happened to? You meet a girl, you fall in love, the girl fall in love with you. You love me? Yes, I love you. Oh yeah, let's never be together. Okay. It's so stupid. I quit. I never watched another episode of Bones. There's no reason for Bones and Booths not to be together. You can't keep them apart. But Buffy and Angel, he was a vampire. He was a vampire slayer. She was. I mean, that's a bad couple. But that is something you can go on. But where TV messes up is there's no reason for them not to be together, and they still don't get together. That's stupid.
Yeah.
It's like Who's the Boss? That went on for 8 years before they got together.
Right.
And even in that, they said there was a few episodes, I think, in Search for Tony in season 6. They said that we need to just see other people and see how it goes. Even though we love each other, we're not in that place. It's still, I think writers try and drag it out sometimes longer than necessary.
Right.
I guess,
and that's why your Mulder and Scully is a great example, because they weren't trying to get together at all, nor did they ever mention it. It was just us who wanted them to be together because they both were so damn cute.
Yes. I think Lucifer, I don't know if you've watched Lucifer, that I would say to me is the closest to Moonlighting, in the sense of exactly what you said. What better reason not to get together with somebody than he's the devil?
Right.
That's the best reason to keep two people apart, but they still manage to have that dynamic and the solving crimes together and the banter and but the heart underneath. But I do think that obviously in season 4 of Moonlighting they were forced apart, whereas a lot of shows deliberately put them apart just to delay that getting together.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I think by the time Sybil came back to work, I just think their personal relationship was so bad that there was just no way those two were gonna have the spark anymore on camera.
Yeah.
And they just don't. Now, supposedly, you mentioned Lois and Clark. They hated each other as well. Terry Hatcher and Dean Cain supposedly hated each other with a fiery passion.
Yeah, I think also though, I think David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson have said that they didn't get on. I guess when you're in that environment, I mean, the hours to be working TV is so ridiculous, and so I guess you're kind of with that person more than you're with your actual family. That if you don't get on, it kind of gets heightened and magnified, I'd imagine, because you see them since the reboot, they actually look like they get on really well. So, but I did hear that about Dean Cain and Terry Hatcher. So maybe, and even with Castle, that was another example where they apparently didn't get on. And
wasn't it the same with Gilmore Girls as well, with Luke and
I didn't know that. Luke and Lorelai don't get along?
No. Oh, Dawn, you've ruined it for us now.
Breaking my heart.
Oh no, sorry.
Now see, that's another show that makes me angry, because Luke was so good to Lorelai. And it always drove me crazy that they weren't together. And whenever she is mean to Luke, I don't like it and I don't want to watch it. And it makes me angry. And now you're telling me they don't like each other in real life.
Oh, that character was such high maintenance. Luke was just lovely. And she was, and then when she married
Christopher,
his name, Rory's Christopher, it was like, and then they brought April in, it's like, what are you doing to this show? It's like, it's just unnecessary.
Yeah.
But I do love that show.
Yeah, in the beginning it was great.
I do think it's interesting how many TV shows there are with great couples that have had that dynamic off screen, that they just didn't get along at all. And maybe that's kind of what makes it. Maybe that is what generates the chemistry on screen. I don't know. Maybe that's the secret.
See, but we've got the antithesis of that. Have you heard of the TV show Dempsey and Makepeace at all, from the 1980s?
I have not.
That was a UK TV show. It's about an American cop, and a hit gets taken out of him in New York. So he comes to England and works in a special unit called SI10. He gets partnered with this English detective who's a Lady Harriet Makepeace, and the completely opposites clash. And that ran for 3 seasons, and they got married, and they're still married like 30 years later in real life. But it's very sexist, it's very dated, but it's being repeated on TV over here at the moment, and it's still pretty cool. So
it's interesting that that was on at the same time as Moonlighting. It was 1985 and 1986, and obviously as well, Remington Steele was around that time. And I think Scarecrow and Mrs. King was maybe slightly before that. It seemed like it was a sudden thing, this, couple, will they get together? And before that, it had never existed.
Well, it was Sam and Diane started it. So Cheers changed all of television in that way. And I love Scarecrow and Mrs. King. Now, I haven't seen an episode of Scarecrow and Mrs. King in probably 30 years. I have no idea. Have you seen it? Did it hold up?
No, we haven't. it's one of the ones we have to watch. We're going to watch together and film it.
Because neither of us have seen it, so we were going to watch it.
Oh,
to
you've
see.
never seen it?
No.
Oh my gosh, it was so good. Like I remember loving it and being so in to wanting them to be together. But I don't even remember if they got together. That was a show that I only watched when it was on, and I never saw another episode.
And
There's no way it isn't horrible now. It's got to be horrible.
I think some things are dated because the way attitudes and things have changed since the 1980s. But it's like last year in lockdown, Dawn was like, have you never watched Remington Steele? And I'm like, no. So I literally binge watched the whole thing. And I kind of think maybe if I'd watched that before Moonlighting, that could have been my first shipping focus instead of, but because everyone says Moonlighting was more risk, because it kind of followed on, wasn't it? Because Ben Gordon Caron was a writer on Remington Steele. Right. And it just took a lot more risks. And even Pierce Brosnan said he wished he'd done that show because it was. But did you ever watch Remington Steele? Was that like? Do you think?
I did a little bit, but it was never one that I went crazy for. I was a little young when it was on, and I kind of liked it, but I didn't care.
Yeah.
It never really grabbed me.
It was quite funny. I watched one of the episodes. I think it was a Christmas episode from season 4. And I think it must have been like 1986, but it was basically Die Hard. It's like they all get held hostage in a office building, and it's just like it was Die Hard pre-Die Hard.
There they go. They got to steal from someone. Why not?
So was Moonlighting your first TV obsession then?
No, in all honesty, soap was, which you mentioned Susan Harris. Mm. I mean, I loved soap so much, and I was way too young for it. Have you guys, either of you, ever seen soap?
Yeah, I've seen soap.
I haven't.
Yeah.
It's wildly inappropriate by today's standards, but funny, so who cares? But I remember there's a cliffhanger where the main character, Katherine Hellman, she played Jessica, dies. And I was like 10 or 11 years old. And I just started sobbing, and I ran upstairs and slammed my bedroom door and dove on my bed like a petulant child. And my dad came upstairs and he opened the door and said, "What the hell are you doing?" And I said, "Jessica's dead." And he said, "She's the star of the show. She'll be back next year," and slammed the door. And in some ways, I feel like that moment is why I'm writing books about television, because my dad's logical thought of, she's not dead. And guess what? In the season premiere, she wasn't dead. But as a kid, I didn't know they just killed my Jessica. So that really was the first show I totally got caught up in.
Yeah. And you always wanted to write about TV.
Well, I was just so interested in it. I mean, in a lot of ways, I wanted to write TV myself. I mean, do my own TV shows. It just, life didn't work out that way. But I've always been curious about it. And it's fun for me to get behind the scenes and to think about, how did you do that? How did you create that? And, speaking of relationships, I'm sure you guys have talked about Ross and Rachel a lot from Friends. And I think that's a great example that people should look at. Yeah, you kept Ross and Rachel apart for 11 years or 10 years, but no one cared when they got together. But you let Monica and Chandler get together, and that's the relationship in that show that, to me, I cared about more.
Yeah, that's definitely the best relationship. And Ross, he was not always a likable character anyway. He was actually really quite nasty.
I can't stand Ross. Is by far the worst.
I was saying to Lucy just yesterday that I think I've realized that TV shows, will they, won't they, slow burns, whatever you want to call them, it's a game of chicken with the audience. Is how long you can draw it out and keep them interested, and don't go too soon and then they lose interest, and don't drag it on too long and they lose interest. You've got to find that perfect sweet spot where they get together and there's enough that they can enjoy it, but you don't lose the momentum. And obviously Friends didn't do that.
No, not with them.
But what would you have done with Moonlighting? Would you have got them together at that point, or would you have got them together at different?
I know. I think I love that they get together when they get together. And one of the things Glenn says in the book is it was always his intention to get them together. He was like, these are two really attractive people. They were going to sleep together. Like, of course they were going to. Now, I think the mistake was having Maddie get pregnant. I mean, that was just a mistake. That was not a show to have a kid in. And I think they knew it was a mistake. So
do you feel like in the final season, when you get the Plastic Fantastic Lover episodes, that they were trying to just get back what they had in seasons 1 and 2, but I think it was definitely lacking that chemistry? Do you think they could have done that any differently? Or
no, I haven't coined what to call this yet, and if I was a really good writer, I already would have before I started this sentence. Dang it. But
you can edit that out, it's fine.
Well, I'm not gonna name it now either, but I've always, I would love to write about this, but I haven't named it yet. But I think there is this thing in television that you can't say what it is. It's this thing, and it's there, and then it's gone. And like the Gilmore Girls is a great example. You're watching it, you love it, you care, and then by the time she's marrying Christopher, I'm out. I don't care anymore. By the time Luke and Lorelai get together, I don't even care. And why did I care, and why don't I care? And Friends with Ross and Rachel, I cared so much in season 2, but really in the finale, I care? I don't care. So what is that thing? And then it's gone. Moonlighting was gone.
Some kind of magic, isn't it? That you just, but you often you don't even notice when it goes either. You just feel like you say, you're watching a few more episodes and you think, actually, I don't actually bothered now if I miss the next one or the rest of them. It's right. It's funny how it goes. I think about that. You say at that point, you said like when Luke and Lorelai hadn't even got together, and some people would have stuck with it until they did. But I think when they sort of get together, sometimes you think, okay, that's the magic gone, but it does happen before that point. But I think maybe because I think Amy Sherman Palladino wasn't in writing that last season, could that have been a factor, do you think, for Gilmore Girls? Or
well, and I have one of our books the company did is The Women of Amy Sherman Palladino, which is a really interesting book because it covers Maisel, Bunheads, and Gilmore Girls, and it really didn't sell that well, which it really surprised me because I'm like, aren't there Gilmore Girls fans out there? I thought there were more than I guess there was, or maybe no one cares about Luke and Lorelai in that way. I don't know. But actually, I think it sucks before Amy leaves. So I don't know that it's because Amy left. I think it's the season. Her last season isn't very good either because she's the one that brought Christopher back. I think she really thought Christopher and Lorelai were a good couple, and they really weren't.
I think one of the problems that shows have is that the networks keep them on too long. And not just the network, I suppose, but everybody involved. It's making money. Let's just keep doing it.
Definitely. I mean, that's why I love British television. You guys don't really have that trouble doing short amount of episodes. I mean, in America, we love to watch a British show, like we were talking about Victoria and everything. I mean, of course, I need more Jenna Coleman, but I mean, I like that they're only doing 6 episodes and we're out. Yeah, and that's the right amount.
I mean, that's the show that Lucy was talking about, Carshare, that we met through. That's 12 episodes from start to finish, which introduces the characters, builds their relationship, creates a breaking point in the relationship, then gets them together. And it's like, that's all you need. That's it.
Right.
And even though we go, well, we would love more, but we know, no, that's right. That's the right place to leave these characters. And I think a problem is that they just want to it's like what they do with The Simpsons. It's like, just, it doesn't matter if it's the same story over and over again. It's still enough people watching it that advertisers will get good money, and that's all they care about, really. Oh, it's the art. It needs to be for the art.
With Fleabag, isn't it? And Phoebe Waller-Bridge and Ricky Gervais in The English Office, they're like, we're going to stop it here because it ends in a really, like Fleabag especially, it ends in that place you can't, how do you top that? It's like, where do you go from there? So you think, oh, you bring it back, but it's like, but it ended really nicely. And yes, it's only 12 episodes, but I think I think in America it's a lot more difficult because they've got to stretch it out for 22 episodes a season, and then it's a lot more content to fill. Because we in one of our episodes we discussed the differences between The Upper Hand, which was the English version of Who's the Boss, and there's so many episodes they didn't make, but we just think they cherry picked the best ones and made them, because they only had like 10 episodes a season, and then I think it only lasted about half the amount of time as well. So I think the writing dynamic does change quite a lot.
Yeah, this is certainly not a show where anyone ships, but are either of you watching Succession on HBO?
Currently, my obsession is Succession, and I am shipping Roman and Jerry. Sorry, I'm an obsession. Slime puppy, idiot rock star, and mole woman.
Yeah, I mean, what a healthy relationship that is. Are you in season 3?
Yes, it's airing the same time here as it is in the US.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Too bad Doctor Who isn't doing that, or else I'd be watching Doctor Who. So BBC. Yeah, it'll come. It'll end up here. We'll see. Succession is a show that I'm afraid they're just going to do the same thing over and over again. This season, while I'm enjoying it, it's not as good as seasons 1 and 2, because I feel like we have not moved at all in 8 episodes. We're in the exact same spot that we were in the season 2 cliffhanger. And that isn't my favorite kind of TV show. That's why I wrote down your inside number 9, because when you guys said the magic word to me, which is every episode is different. And to me, that's what Moonlighting did so well. You didn't know what you were going to turn in and get. And that's what I want.
I think, personally, I don't know if you think, do you think Moonlighting could be done today? Do you think it wouldn't?
I don't. I mean, you certainly couldn't bring it back in any real way because nobody would care. I mean, what could they do that wouldn't have been done? And you wouldn't, Bruce and Sybil are too old really to do it. I mean, I'm not being ageist. I'm just saying, like, they're sort of out of that. They're not going to come back for television, either of them. So.
And earlier, Dawn mentioned Lucifer, but is there a show that you think is close to Moonlighting in the way it was made, or the dynamic, or is there anything that you think is similar? Or
I do, but you're going to think I'm crazy. But it's Atlanta. Do you guys have Atlanta over there?
Haven't seen Atlanta. Is that with
Danny Glover?
Yeah, Danny Glover.
It's not Danny Glover. Danny Glover is from Lethal Weapon.
Is it Donald
Glover?
Yeah.
There we go. So the reason I pick Atlanta is that every week it's different. It's not the same thing, and you don't know what you're going to get, and it's so strange. Like one time the whole episode is like these different commercials and just weird stuff, and then one time it's like a haunted house and it has nothing to do with the plot, and then they'll go back to the plot, and it's just so different every week. And that show reminds me of how it was to watch Moonlighting, when you were like, hey, I don't know, maybe it's going to be a mystery, and maybe it's going to be a black and white, and maybe it's going to be Shakespeare. So that's the show that I would pick, which is a crazy answer, but I'm sticking with it.
I'll have to watch that now.
It's really interesting.
One of the things I wondered about, speaking about things now and then, is how do you think Glen Gordon Carden got away with it? That sounds like, it was a crime. But I mean, how did he manage to, do things so late, go over budget and things, and stay in charge? I don't understand it.
I don't either. And I really tried to find it out. And I think the only answer is money. So he was making money for them. And that to me is the second thing the book is about. Like on the front level, the book is of course about moonlighting. But the second thing that the book is about that's underneath is about how television changed, because Moonlighting was broadcast on ABC, but the show was owned by ABC. So they were making double money. And Moonlighting was like a test. So they were kind of like letting this young punk kid do it, and they were kind of making a little money. And I think by that 5th year, they said, well, wait a minute, what if we own the show, but it didn't cost any money to make? Then we'd make triple money. And that sort of changed why they started making crappy TV and not putting the money into the episodes to make them good, because we'd watch it anyway. And then that's how HBO and all those other shows took over, because they started doing that. And then that's how streaming took over. And who knows what's going to happen next.
Yeah. Where will we go next with TV? I don't know if you know about Star Trek Discovery in the UK. It's been taken off of, I think it was on Amazon Prime, so that Paramount can create their own streaming, and it'll be on there. And it's it's becoming, you have to have 6 different streaming accounts to watch programs.
I think what it is I used to work in for NBC, and I used to work in TV distribution, and because they have so much content, they're probably thinking, why do we need to give this to other people? We can make money by having our own platform and having because I think Peacock that's all Universal content, and that's what I think Paramount, they've got all the Star Trek back catalogue and all that kind of thing, but it's getting to a point, it's just we're being smothered with content a little bit now. I mean, do you think terrestrial TV will survive the way TV is currently going?
In some ways, it makes me sad, because especially Star Trek, and because like, if you're our age, you kind of most likely you stumbled upon Star Trek and it was a little hokey, and why am I watching Kirk? And he's kind of like sleeping with everyone, and wasn't that girl green? But it was free, and it was just on that off channel, and then you got sucked up into what it was telling you about how we're all right, and we're all going to work together, and we're going to solve this problem by thinking. And that's actually why I love Doctor Who, because he doesn't carry a gun, or she, and they solve it by thinking and working the problem out. And now the only way kids are going to learn that lesson is if their parents are rich enough to pay for it. And then they're not going to choose to watch Star Trek, because you wouldn't. You're gonna watch this flashy thing. And so it kind of makes me sad. So there, I gave you my old man get off my lawn speech.
Talking about Star Trek, I think you mentioned it in your reviews of shows from last year, but the Orville, have you watched all of those?
Oh my gosh, I love the Orville.
Yeah, we love it too.
I just binge watched it all about 2 weeks ago. I was so surprised how much I enjoyed it. I didn't expect it to be what it was.
No, it's actually good. Like, you think it's going to be Family Guy or something silly, but they really brought I really don't like Discovery at all. I just find it to be anti-Star Trek. I mean, when you make the Klingons boring, you have messed up Star Trek. But the Orville has all of it. I mean, I love it. And supposedly that's coming back, right?
Yeah,
in March. On Hulu in March.
So I'm so excited.
I loved the relationship he created with Isaac and the doctor. I thought, wow, that's amazing to go there but make it really heartfelt, and it wasn't just silly. It was moving. And
definitely.
Also, it's like with Star Trek, I mean, I'm in my course at the moment doing a lot about representation in television, and just with the whole Moclan, having the whole male species on the planet, and then having the child gender reassigned, and then the female planet, it's quite political without being blatantly in your face political. But
right,
I think it's very well written. It surprised me.
And that goes back to Star Trek, doesn't it? Because Star Trek had one of the first interracial kisses on television, so it was breaking ground back in the 60s, and so Orville's doing it now, as you say, better than Star Trek itself.
Definitely better than Star Trek. And but I mean, a lot of the next generation writers are working on Orville, and like Jonathan Frakes directs episodes, and so it's nice that they kind of went to where you were supposed to go, because I love the next generation. That's my favorite Star Trek. But I like hopeful television. Again, that's why I like Victoria and Doctor Who and Gilmore Girls. That's what I want to watch. I don't want to watch the end of the world. I don't care about your zombies coming to eat me. I have no interest in that.
I'm just laughing because until recently I was a writer about The Walking Dead. So,
Well,
you know.
I mean, many people tell me I'm wrong about The Walking Dead and that I should watch it and that it's more to that, but I'm just not watching a zombie show. I'm just not doing it.
No,
I can't do horror or zombies. I
would only
squeamish.
I would only suggest watching the first few seasons and then it goes off the boil. So even if you do, it is a lot about, which I think is what I like in a lot of TV shows, is about found family and you know, strangers that become your family and you know, the humanity, the fight of humanity over all the other stuff that's going on, you know, not killing and stuff like that. So it is hopeful in a way, but I agree, I totally love hopeful TV. Is definitely
You guys watch Downton Abbey, or do you not like it because you're British?
Oh no, I love Downton Abbey.
Yeah.
I'm looking for a movie as well.
Yeah, because I loved it so much, but now I like Victoria better. I think Victoria is just a titch better than Downton Abbey because Downton Abbey punishes you. It's a little soapy sometimes. But I still love it, and I can't wait for the movie, and I love Maggie Smith. And
can I tell you a little anecdote about that? Because
Please do.
That was one of the shows I distributed when I worked for NBC Universal, and we had a screening of season 2, and it was introduced by Carson and Mrs. Hughes, and we all sat down level on the floor, and the guy that was interviewing them said, "Oh, do you want to take a seat?" And Carson just said, "No, I'd rather stand." It's like, "Well, please take a seat." And he was like, "No, because if I stand, the people at the back won't be able to see me, and that won't be fair." And I thought, full respect.
Oh,
So I
what
thought,
a nice guy. Carson's a good guy.
Really do. And the stories they were saying, they would just come across as such a lovely pair, and they just had a really good friendship, like it really came across, and I thought it was really lovely. But sorry, that was my Downton anecdote.
I love it. So what relationship would you ship on Downton?
It was definitely Matthew and Mary to begin with, and I thought Bates and Mrs. Hughes were really cute. Not Bates and Mrs. Hughes. Carson and Mrs. Hughes was really sweet. It was really subtle.
Carson and Mrs. Hughes is right up my street. I do have a fondness for middle-aged ships. Slightly older couples. I do love that.
I do like Anna and Bates as well, but that was kind of one of those ships where they just threw everything at them, and it kind of got to a point. It's like, okay, how much more torment and heartbreak can this pair go through? You think it would really try to drag that one out as long as possible?
Yeah, I loved Anna and Bates in the beginning, but then same with you, like it just got to be when they put him up for murder. Like, how could they both be arrested and he was arrested a bunch of times and then be like, it was just too much. And that's why I like how Victoria doesn't do those soapy stories. They stay pretty straight in with their relationship.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they're doing with Victoria. I'm not sure if they're waiting now a couple of years until she's a little bit older so they can go back so she can continue. I'm not sure if they're making any more, because it's been a couple of years, isn't it, since it aired?
Well, I think I had heard that they were going back before the pandemic and then they didn't go back. So I know that the plan is there's a season coming, but I don't think they've shot it yet. And I wouldn't mind if they waited 5 years to let her age a little bit. I mean, she's always going to be beautiful in my eyes, so it doesn't really matter.
Speaking of that, have you watched The Crown? Are you a fan of The Crown?
I do like The Crown. I thought this season was the first week season. Anderson was phenomenal, but I didn't really like the Princess Di, Prince Charles storyline because it was the first time that I felt that it might not be true. Like when he's yelling at her in private, I'm thinking, how do you know that happened? And there was too much, up till now, it was very history based. And I think I like the history. And now, I don't know. I didn't think this season was great. What about you guys?
I am not a fan of it, but I'm a huge fan of Gillian Anderson. So of course I had to see her as Thatcher. But I think the problem is that they're catching up too much with present day, and these people are still alive, and it just makes it too close to reality, but not, you know, they're saying, oh, well, it's based on things that I've heard. But I saw that Jemima Khan, who was a friend of Princess Diana's, has left the show as a consultant because she doesn't like what they're doing with Diana. And I think that's it's all become a bit too,
I agree.
Yeah.
It should have been a bit more of a space between them if they were going to do it this near, because I think they're going to go to the millennium or up to maybe the Windsor Fire in 92, 93. I mean, I watched the first 2 seasons, and then I watched up to about episode 3 of the last season, and then I haven't bothered watching the rest of it. I mean, I love Olivia Colman. I think she's a fantastic actress, and Gillian Anderson. And the guy that played Prince Charles, I thought he was excellent in, I don't know if you've seen the TV series The Durrells that's set in Crete just prior to World War II.
Is it where they move, where the dad dies and they move?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought he was really good in that. But The Crown, I didn't get into it.
It's not as good as it used to be. I agree.
Right.
It's the Durrells is another ship actually that was a one I just got into this year with Spiros and the mum. And that I think they did that well because obviously they were real people, you know, the Durrells were real and their lives were documented in their own diaries and things. But they did add this element of a ship. But they had it at the end that they eventually were going to get together and World War II split them up. So that was another perfect way.
Yeah. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
How many times does it happen when you're just about to get together with someone and all the world starts to fight?
Exactly. Or a pandemic hits, you know.
Right.
I'm sure that'll be the MacGuffin in a few relationships and on TV. Definitely the dear, we're stuck in separate countries and.
Yeah,
it's a TV show that Dawn and I have done that we love called Miranda. It's an English sitcom that has Tom Ellis from Lucifer in it. It's only was on for 3 seasons, and there's a will they won't they throughout it between Miranda and Tom Ellis's character, but it's so full of tropes where it turns out he's gone away and he's married somebody for a green card, and there's the miscommunication, there's the misunderstanding, they think he's going to leave and she chases. There's so many tropes in it, but they're really well executed. Do you think there's a time and a place for tropes, or do you think there's things that are just done to death and they think, okay, you can forget those now, we need to start thinking of new ideas?
Of course there's a time and place for it, but I think it has to be character based, and I think that is what struggles for good writing. If you're a good writer, you can put those hurdles there and they feel natural. It's when they don't feel natural, and when you have a responsible adult that just is not going to be into that, you know. I don't know, it's just sometimes it's too much for me. And getting together is okay, it's interesting, there's an interesting story to be told there. Like, that's what a relationship is, the falling in love and then the getting together, and then you have to make it work out every day. There's no end of stories.
So I was just going to ask if you think Moonlighting may have worked better if it had more of an ensemble, or they utilised Mr. Pesto and Herbert Viola a little bit more.
I mean, the problem was the audiences hated when they did. I mean, people just wanted Dave and Maddie so much, but I liked it. I think they're funny, and I like some of that nonsense. But I think building a show just around 2 characters is really hard. But then it is funny, the X-Files was really able to do it. I mean, yeah, you've got Skinner, but he didn't take up a lot of screen time.
No.
And how about that? Skinner is really the Mr. Pesto of the X-Files. I have never thought that in my life.
That's the big quote that we use when we advertise this episode, isn't it?
You clearly need to write a book about this, definitely.
I just think Mitch would love to know that he's the Mr. Pesto. That's hilarious.
It's something we talk about a lot in so many of these ships, is they do have to have a character who acts as the audience. And obviously Mr. Pesto is that in Moonlighting, where she knows what's going on between them. She knows they're in love and should be, and she's the one that puts the audience's point of view forward and says, why aren't you together? Why, and although Skinner never actually said that to Mulder and Scully, but he definitely.
And I'm glad he didn't. That would have been a really awkward scene if he brought them into his office and cigarette smoking man standing back there, and he's like, just wait a minute, bye, before you light up. You two kids, can you just
not
get
being
together?
funny, ever since Triangle, I think Skinner's been in love with Scully anyway, so he would never have said that.
Yeah. Oh,
After she
maybe.
kissed him in the lift, I think there was no turning back for Skinner. So
Mhm.
The thing is, and Skinner would know they're not together because, obviously they were under 24 hours surveillance. So Scully would say,
Right.
how do you know we're not sleeping together? And go, oh, well, oops, we've given away that we've been tracking your every move for 5 years.
Exactly.
That is perfect. Skinner is the Mr. Pesto of the X-Files, definitely.
brilliant.
It's hard to say a sentence that no one's ever said before, but I think we did.
I think that's it. Is speaking of what else you're going to write, do you have another book that you're in the works at the moment, or?
Yes, I have a book that's coming out in May. It's about Twin Peaks because it'll be the 30th anniversary of Fire Walk with Me, which was the movie version of Twin Peaks. So that book's coming out in May. And then I'm starting work on my follow-up to that, which is going to be about movies that were made in the 90s. So right now I'm just sort of collecting a bunch of films and trying to pick like 2 movies a year. And I want to write a book that sort of says that movies are horrible now.
Yeah.
That's basically it.
So there'd just be like any movies, or is it a specific genre that you're going to go for, just the bigger?
Well, I don't know what I'm going to do yet because I really just started. So what I'm doing now is I'm just compiling the list. I have a list of 160 movies from the 90s, and I'm starting to watch them and take notes and try to see patterns. And then I'm going to like talk about them all at once. But I honestly don't know what I'm going to do. Like this is for 2024, probably. I'm just starting work on it now.
Wow.
And the Red Room, I think there was a Sondheim one you put up this week. Is there any more themes or episode plans for any more episodes?
With the Red Room, we just do what we want. I've been doing it for 11 years, and when we feel like it, we do one. And I was a huge Sondheim fan, so when he died, I really wanted to talk about it. And I got Matt Zoller-Seitz, who's an American TV critic, and he's also a big Sondheim fan. So we just kind of talked about his career and things like that. But I never know what we're going to do next, just whatever. We don't plan it out. And
I'm glad you said that because it's not just us.
Well, it's got to be fun. I mean, doing a podcast, it's so much work. It just takes so much time. So if you're not doing it for fun, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
I think that's how we came about doing the pajama party ones, because we just ended up saying, started watching episodes, and we were just talking about so much stuff over it. We thought we should just be recording these, and it just kind of grew organically. And I think it's so much fun just to sit and just talk about TV, just watching it. And sometimes some of them we haven't seen for quite a long time, and it's when you watch it back, you think, I don't remember this happening. It's like, what's the? And there's some episodes, I think we've watched a couple of episodes, don't see Makepeace. Apart from the scenes they're in, we couldn't tell you what's going on in the plot because we just lose focus when they're not on the screen. I think that's.
I was so delighted to hear that in the Moonlighting podcast that they said they didn't know the plot of some of the episodes, and we were like, "Oh, thank goodness, it's not just us."
Right.
We weren't paying attention.
No, because they were so cute.
Yeah, exactly. They were. I think that it's one of those things where it was lightning in a bottle with Moonlighting, and you couldn't recreate it. And I wonder if maybe it was the things that made it so genius and original are the things that also doomed it to failure in the end, because
I think so.
3 big personalities, really, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yep. I mean, I think that's exactly it. It was just one of those things that was going to live for a short amount of time, and it did, and we're glad it did. But nothing lasts forever.
No.
It's a shame because ABC owned the season, that when they knew that Sybil Shepherd was pregnant, they could have just said, like they did with Emily Deschanel. They said, okay, well, we'll as you don't do the episodes back to back, film what you can, and then we'll do repeats in September, but we'll start the show in January, and you can have brand new episodes. You get her to come back and delay it a bit. I think it would have been done differently if that had occurred today, because I think back then it was like, it's.
And back then they just weren't gonna change their schedule, and TV was very structured. I mean, that was a big part of it. You didn't break the structure of television.
If you were asked about the Moonlighting curse, what would you say if somebody said, you know, oh, we can't get them together because it'll ruin the program? And that's what. How would you sum it up as how you see
I mean, first thing I'd tell them is to buy my book.
Yes, of course.
That's the first thing I'd say. If you want to really know about it, then you better buy my book. But I mean, but really that honestly is my answer, because I think it's more complex than saying that it's Dave and Maddie. And it was a million things that happened at once. It was Die Hard. It was Sybil getting pregnant. It was Glen getting to direct Clean and Sober. It was the fact that Elise Beasley got pregnant. Then there was a writer's strike. I mean, all these things happen at once. And then, you know, because people hate complex answers, they just decided, oh, Dave and Maddie got together, that ruined the show. And it's just not the truth. That is not what happened at all.
So this is our, as you can probably tell, this is going to be our Christmas episode. What is your favorite ever Christmas episode of a TV show?
Well, I mean, I don't even have to think about it. It is Picket Fences, the first season. I cannot remember the name of it. It's the 10th episode. Wait a minute. I'm being a bad guest and I'm looking it up.
Picket Fences Holiday Special is the first thing that came up for me. So it's obviously a big.
It's called Cross-Examination. It's in season 2. It's weird to me that that's where it is, but that's what my iTunes is telling me. That is a great Christmas episode. Oh my gosh, it is so good. A woman is pulled out of a car that she was in a car wreck, and they think she's dead. But they find out that she's pregnant, but she's a virgin. So because of the examination, they realize she's never had sex. So it's Christmas time and they have a pregnant virgin. And from where it goes from there becomes this debate, and it becomes a trial. And it's just so interesting, because then, you know, you got the kids believing in Santa, but then are you going to believe in the virgin birth? But that's what Christmas is all about. And just the twists and turns in that episode, I love it. It's written by David E. Kelly, and it's my favorite Christmas episode.
I think mine is Quantum Leap, A Little Miracle with Charles Rocket. That's mine. I think I love that episode.
It is great. And I'm actually rewatching Quantum Leap right now, and it's so good. And what about you?
I have to say, not just because of this, but that is Moonlighting. It's a Wonderful Job. I watched that every Christmas for 20 years. So I do know just about every line, you know, and I like that. I probably do like it because it is quite dark and quite, you know, which is, I suppose, you know, it's from A Wonderful Life, it is dark anyway, but I think I liked it because we got to really see Maddie, a focus on Maddie in a way that I don't think a lot. Obviously it's not entirely canon, you know, you don't know how much of it is canon, but I really liked that we got to see Maddie and her vulnerability and what drove her.
So I'll tell you, I'm going to give you a scoop. Here comes the scoop. So because of the way the book was working, I just felt that we needed to get to the 4-part episode. So I skipped the Christmas episode in my book because I didn't have that much on it. But I did have this one thing. So nobody knows this because it's not in the book. But the writer of that episode is Deborah Frank, who also wrote the black and white episode. She told me that the script she wrote is very different from what got on the air, that Glen rewrote it, and Glen like made Maddie a little harsher and firing McGillicuddy. She didn't have that storyline in that way. And she felt that he made it just a little darker than she had it. But the way the Writing Guild works is you submit the written script, not the script that they shoot. So her written script was submitted to the Writers Guild and it won Best Show. But it's not really what aired. And I begged her to give me that script because I wanted to know what the differences were. And she could never find it. She, or she didn't want to give it to me. It could be one or the other. And she didn't really want to go against Glen, but supposedly she says her script was very different. So there's a little scoop for you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's fascinating. Wow. It is a shame that Maddie was painted so. It's one of these weird things that I've said before in other TVs where I go, that character is better than how they're written. They're a better person. I know they are,
Right.
And obviously that with Maddie, that happened a lot. I just watched Tu Eres Human last night in preparation for this. And I just thought, oh, she's awful in it. She's just horrible.
It's written by men sometimes. Like, it's just the whole speech, like in Big Man on Mulberry Street, that was written by, was it Karen
Hall? Yeah,
and it just comes across as so differently that it's written by a woman. You can tell, you can relate to that more. But then you have like the dialogue, like into Eris Human, and the whole thing about making the pacts and everything else. And they're just like, no, what are you doing? It's like...
No, I agree totally. Terrace Human has a lot of, it is very frustrating. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
It's one of the worst moonlightings.
Yeah.
And I think that in Trip to the Moon as well frustrated me with the whole bit where he's out and trying to persuade her to come out with him. And it's like, would you really go to that much effort?
They said they just didn't have Sybil and they had to film. So they just had him do that. But I always fast forward through that scene. It goes on forever.
That I find really curious about that scene is that by the time she does come out, it's about 8:30 at night. And then they end up in a laundromat at 2:00 in the morning. What were they doing for the 4 hours in between?
There was traffic, a lot of traffic.
Okay. LA is busy, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Well, I think we should round it up. We've been talking for over an hour, so we thank you so much for your time. We really, really appreciate that.
Sorry, can I just ask one really important question?
Of course.
Do you think Die Hard is a Christmas movie?
I watch it every Christmas. Does that answer your question? So when I sent Bruce Willis a copy of my Letterman book, because he's also in that, because he was in the last 6 weeks, and I put a letter in it. This was when I thought, and I have sent him the questions because they wanted the questions. And I started by saying, I just want to thank you for making the greatest Christmas movie of all time. So I got to tell Bruce Willis that Die Hard is by far a Christmas movie. And me and my son and wife, we watch it. We watch it Christmas Eve.
I saw it last weekend at the cinema or the movie theatre, and I'd never seen it on a big screen before. And it was pretty awesome. I've seen it loads on like regular television, but never on a cinema screen.
Yeah, it's a Christmas movie.
Right. There we go then. The official verdict's in.
But thank you guys. This was wonderful. And anyone who wants my book can go to scottryanproductions.com and pick up any of my books. And it's exciting. We're giving a free one away.
Yep. And your Red Room podcast, if you want to catch your podcast, is on iTunes and Spotify.
Yep. Yes, just search for Red Room Podcast, and I also put that up through scottryanproductions.com. Well, it worked out perfectly. You guys were both so much fun and great hosts, and I really had a good time.
Thank you so much. And
make sure you send me the link, and I'll tweet it and get it out there to the world.
Oh, thank you. And have a good rest of Sunday. Enjoy Succession tonight. It's a big one.
I will. Bye, guys.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
So thank you very much to Scott Ryan for joining us. We absolutely loved that conversation, and of course we loved the book. We both read it. In fact, we have it in every format. We have hardback, Kindle, and audiobook, so that's dedicated.
So he's getting the commission this month.
Yeah, so if you want to know more about Moonlighting, the behind the scenes, then get Scott's book.
Yeah, this is Scott's book, Moonlighting An Oral History. You can get it on Amazon, on the Amazon website. You can download the audio version from Audible, and in the States, it's available from LafayetteMediaPress.com. So, and just Google it. Just say, type in Moonlighting An Oral History and tick on shopping, and then that will tell you where you can go and buy it. But if you're a Moonlighting fan, it is so recommended. It's great to hear, like, it's just really, I mean, for a Moonlighting fan, it's you can't put it down. I mean, it's,
and I think
really insights in.
For anybody who's a fan of TV and how TV is made, it's a huge insight into that, the process, obviously in the 80s, the process of how that happens.
Yeah, and I think even for Moonlighting, it was a law to itself, and I think that's evident in this book. I mean, they still do the long hours now, they did the long hours then, but I think it was just so many other factors and multi-layers in this series that come across in this book that you think, wow, I didn't realize that. And I think also, as we discussed with Scott earlier, it kind of just debunks the whole Moonlighting curse theory. So yeah, definitely, it's not too late to get it for Christmas. If not, do it as a New Year gift. So Scott, we're plugging it for you. So
yeah. So that's us for 2021, our first year, well, not a full year, but you know what I mean, it's the first year we've been doing this.
wow.
I know, hard to believe. And what a year it's been for both of us. Just
my goodness, yeah. Hopefully we'll be a bit more structured next year. We'll try and release content on specific days, but do you know what, we've said that in the past. I mean, so yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and life gets in the way and life happens. So do you know what, we're enjoying it. We will let you guys know when we are dropping content, and
yeah, if
carry on doing the pajama parties in between the video ones as well, because we find them really fun and we just love watching classic ships and rambling on about them. So
if you want to know when we're dropping stuff, the best way to do that is to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and if you hit the bell, you'll get a notification when we post something new. Follow us on Twitter and on Facebook and on Instagram, and you'll never miss anything we post.
We're also on Spotify now.
Go ahead.
We now have audio versions of it. The video, obviously it's not a video on Spotify, but we can now listen to it in audio. If you haven't got time to watch it, you want to listen to us when you're on the move or in your car, then that is now also an option.
You don't have to look at us. Aren't you lucky?
Yeah, that's why we did it.
Yes, so that's us for 2021. We just want to wish you all a happy holiday season, whatever holiday you celebrate, or if any at all. Stay well, keep healthy, take care, and we are hoping to be back in 2022. 2022.
Oh, it makes me feel old. So
yes, so thank you for joining us on the shipyard. Anything you would like to say to round up?
Thank you to everyone that's listened this year. We're rapidly growing, and if you like, I know there's a lot of people that have been liking stuff on Instagram and on Twitter, but don't just like us, follow us as well. We're quite cool. We're awesome. But no, seriously, thank you to everyone that has watched us and listened this year, and there'll be more of the same in 2022, but say more of the same, maybe slightly better. We'll do our best to improve, but why mess with perfection, you know? It's like, Happy New Year.
Yeah, and on that note, we'll cross our fingers we're better in 2022. Thanks for joining us, and take care.